All right, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Caitlin and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. A few housekeeping items before I introduce you to our speaker. We're going to keep the length of this webinar to just about an hour. If you have any questions, you can submit them at the Q&A box on your screen. We'll get to as many as we can, but if we aren't able to answer your question today, we will definitely follow up over email shortly. And the webinar will be available on demand with the recording a little bit later today. We will email it out if you've opted in to our marketing emails. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Michael. He's the Director of Product Marketing at HelpShift. Michael has over 20 years of experience in the mobile industry, dating back to his work in mobile networks at Motorola, mobile email at Microsoft, mobile security at Good Technology, and mobile marketing at Leanplum. He is passionate about advancing the state of mobile experiences, and today he leads our product marketing team at HelpShift. Now with that, Michael, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. So today I'd like to talk about a couple of topics as it relates to mobile. The first is the impact of churn on the mobile ecosystem. What's going on? Why do apps experience churn? What does it mean for you? The second is, what are the unique challenges of supporting a mobile app? Then we'll talk a little bit about the path to improving the support experience, and then how to maintain support while you scale. Throughout the whole presentation, I'll try to give a couple of real-world examples that we've seen from companies that we've worked with, where they've been successful, where they may have had some challenges in the past. So first of all, the mobile ecosystem is just fundamentally really, really competitive, much more competitive than a lot of businesses out there. So why is that? Well, first of all, there are over 3,000 apps released on app stores every day. Now, most of those apps aren't going to become game-changing apps. Most of them are, frankly, going to kind of go nowhere. But out of 3,000 every day, periodically, one is going to rise to the top. And what we've actually seen over time is that the leading mobile apps tend to turn over pretty quickly. So on the right, you see a graphic of how many apps out of the top 100 worldwide downloads weren't on the list the previous year. And you see that it's about a third of all apps every year that are the top downloaded apps are newcomers to the list. And that number is actually even growing over time. So it's not like this market is settling out. It's actually becoming even more dynamic and changing. And a good example of that is TikTok. TikTok was released outside of China for the first time in 2018. By 2019, it was #1 in the App Store in terms of downloads. Now, TikTok is probably an extreme example, but apps do rise relatively quickly. They can come from nowhere and kind of blindside the market. And then on the flip side, apps can follow just as fast. Remember Vine? Remember Sidecar? I don't know if people actually do remember Sidecar. It was the first ride-sharing app that I personally used way back 10 plus years ago. And that app doesn't exist anymore. That company doesn't exist anymore. So people or apps can emerge very quickly, but they can also fall by the wayside very quickly. So why is that? Well, even in the best of circumstances, users tend to churn really, really quickly in the mobile ecosystem. First of all, there are very low switching costs. I raised the example of Sidecar before. I had Sidecar on my mobile phone, and then I had Lyft and Uber sitting right next to it, the next tile's over. So competitors are just a click away, and if it's too long to wait for something, like a car to arrive, people will just switch to the other service. Second, there are many tire kickers. So the graphic on the right is what is the app retention or user retention for an app at different days. So by the end of the first day, 3/4 of people who have downloaded an app have actually abandoned it. By the time you get to day 30, it's actually 96.5% have abandoned that app. So a lot of people will try things out, but it doesn't mean they'll stick with it. They'll abandon an app that doesn't meet expectations from a capability standpoint, from a usability standpoint, or from a support and service standpoint. They have really low patience. They expect really convenient experiences. They expect it to be easy and not to really tax them or offer or create a lot of cognitive load of how do I get the task I want to do done. They're also, worse still, prone to vent. So when someone has a bad experience with an app, not only do they abandon the app, but some percentage of those folks who do abandon the app write a nasty review on the App Store about how terrible the app is. That has a knock-on effect. Not only is that user lost to you, but it actually impacts user acquisition costs. Because even if you're doing all the best growth hacking, even if you're advertising effectively for your app, when someone comes in and says that's a 2-star app, they're likely to go somewhere else or look for an alternative because the app is not perceived as valuable to them. I know I do that, and I'm sure you do too. So a bad experience can not just impact one user, but a whole series of users down the line. And worst yet, users expect support for an app to be absolutely flawless. A single bad experience is one too many. If you look at some of those App Store reviews, you'll find people who really only used the app for maybe a day, maybe 2 days, but had one bad experience, abandoned the app, and then wrote the nasty review. So there's not a lot of room for error here in the mobile app ecosystem. One of the problems, though, is that the way many apps provide support is fundamentally broken. First of all, a lot of people have adopted sort of legacy approaches to supporting their app. I could name probably 24 apps off the top of my head that are great apps that work really, really well. But when you need to get support for that app, it'll throw you out to a Safari browser. I'm an iOS user, so it's Safari. And it'll put you in a live chat experience on the web, disconnected from the app, or it'll just give you an email address and it'll throw you into your email client to send them an email response. One of the things that we've noticed, actually, we were working with a customer and they had a problem that they were offering email support. And of those users that contacted them with an issue via email, and they got back to the user, only 35% actually continued the conversation to give the company the information they needed to solve the issue. People just won't put up with those sort of delays. People just won't put up with that kind of experience. They ultimately abandon the app. So that experience just doesn't cut mustard when it comes to mobile apps today. Second, I raised the example of TikTok. As I said, that's a bit of an extreme example, but apps blow up. They grow in leaps and bounds. Sometimes they stabilize. Sometimes they blow up again. So it isn't this nice linear growth curve that you can plan for in advance. You have this moment where suddenly you have a whole bunch of new users, and those whole bunch of new users have a whole bunch of new issues. And you either prepare for that by hiring a whole bunch of agents, or you fall behind and you try to react to it. So the result of that is that it's very difficult to support and give a good experience as an app is going through scale. Now, I said I could give 24 examples of apps that have truly terrible support experiences. I could give you also about half a dozen apps that I think have absolutely nailed it. They've done really well with their support experience. For those apps, however, I could also tell you how large their development team was that built that out. They have entire teams of engineers that are building this experience. And that's costly, and that in addition to just costing money for all the developers, it distracts the company from the core experience of the app. So that really slows down the pace at which the company can innovate across other areas and differentiated areas of their app because they're worried about dealing with the support issues that they're facing. So how do you build a strong support experience for a mobile app? Well, the first principle is keep users in the app. Deliver a modern experience, make sure it's 100% integrated with the app, make sure it works in the way that people expect things to work on mobile. Second, you're not going to get there without automation. Automate everything you can. Build your automation in advance of your growth. That way, as the hockey stick kind of comes, you are able to be ahead of it, and you don't have that same sort of resource tax as growth happens. And then third, declare independence. Don't be dependent on development. Deploy solutions that let support teams be support teams and developers be developers, and let support teams solve their own issues on their own. So I think here we're going to go to our first poll question. And the question is, what channels do you support your customers in today? Do you offer in-app support? Do you do web chat? Do you do email? Do you do phone support, or do you simply have FAQs? So I see answers coming in faster now. I'll give them a few minutes. Still seeing a few more in. I'll give folks time. Starting to slow down, so I will close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's see what we got. So the number one answer here seems to be email. 87% of folks are offering email support today. And we've talked about some of the issues with email support as it relates to the mobile app. Then there's two other ones, FAQs, and we didn't specify whether that was FAQs inside or outside of the app, but and then the other one is in-app. Web chat, much less common, and phone, much less common, though actually a little bit higher than I thought it would be for phone. But for those of you who are on the path of FAQs or in-app, I think those are probably the right directions to go. But email, unsurprisingly, is still the single biggest channel, and it's one that works fine in certain instances, but isn't really built for the mobile ecosystem as it's built today. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing that, and we'll move forward. So why does, I said FAQs, I said in-app messaging or in-app support. Why does that matter? Well, there's a few reasons why that really matters from a perspective of the user experience. The first is it reduces user frustration. Users aren't taken out of their flow. They aren't forced to switch back and forth between the app and say a web browser or an email client. I know when I get support via one of those channels like email, I find that to give more information, I often have to go back into the app, switch back to the email, go back into the app, switch back to the email. That's really frustrating and is taxing and bothersome, frankly. Second, it reduces the chance to churn. If a user leaves the app, ends up in their email client, ends up in a web browser, ends up somewhere else, there's a reasonable chance that they will get distracted and that they'll actually end up abandoning the app, or they'll find something better to do at that moment. They'll see that they just got a new push notification that their friend said something on a social networking site, or that there's a new news story, and they may not come back to the app. And some may come back later, but some may not ever again. So it really reduces the chance to churn, to keep folks in the app itself. Third, it really increases or decreases the response time. If you do it really well, you can eliminate some of that back and forth, some of those wait times that go with web chat or email or some of the other channels that are out there, because you can handle it much more immediately within the app. And we'll talk about some of the best practices for doing that. Next, it respects the time of the user. So it's understandable that not every issue can be resolved in 20 seconds. That's not realistic. But when you need more investigation or when something is just going to take a little more time, the best way to handle this is to free up the user, let them keep going. If they're not completely blocked in your app, they may just move forward and do something else in there and resolve the issue later on. If they can't, let them go do something else. But then when you have a response for them, send them a push notification. Then they know the issue has been resolved, and best yet, it pulls them back into the app so that they're using it again and they're less likely to churn. And then what we've actually seen, and we'll give a couple of examples here, is when you improve the experience in these sort of ways, it can really move key metrics around CSAT. It can really improve sort of app store reviews. It can really make things a lot better. So how do you do that? Well, we talked about FAQs a little bit. About 75, 80% of you were using FAQs in some way today. That's a really good start. I would actually say that's the first place to start. But you have to do it right. The first thing you want to do is embed a mobile help center. If you look at the best mobile apps out there, almost all of them have built a knowledge base, and they have really honed in on what are the top user issues that people are having, and they have solutions for them. That keeps the user from actually having to contact you, have to open an issue. They can fix their own problem, and most users are actually pretty okay with that. But you got to make sure that you do it right. What does it mean to do it right? Well, first of all, you have to make sure it feels like part of the app. I can tell you about how many apps I've seen where the mobile help center feels kind of like a bolt-on. Sometimes it's even outside of the app, but even when it's in the app, it just doesn't feel like a natural part of the experience. It doesn't load well. It doesn't render well. It needs to feel as good as the rest of the app in order to really meet the bar here. That includes ensuring it works on every device. If you think about all the different form factors of devices, all the different versions of the operating system, landscape versus portrait mode, especially across Android, that's a really substantial test matrix. So you need to make sure that no matter what device the user has, that it renders perfectly every single time. I realize that's not necessarily easy, but it's super important because otherwise some portion of your user base is going to have a terrible experience, and those people are going to churn, and those people might write negative reviews. And then the last part is create an escalation path. Make sure that you can always create a place where if your FAQ doesn't solve the issue, folks can go to get the issue resolved. So they don't have a dead end, so they don't get frustrated. A good way to do that is with in-app messaging. So what does that mean? Basically, you should enable users to be able to chat with someone in the app. It should be able to handle full problem resolution. It should be able to handle most of the common issues, or it should be able to get an agent involved to fix the complicated ones. However, when you do so, respect the user's time. And the way you do that is to communicate asynchronously. This is the way people are used to communicating on mobile devices. It's the way they communicate with things like iMessage. It lets them communicate on their own terms rather than being tied to when an agent is available or things like that. I mentioned use push notifications. Use them smartly. Inform the user when you have something more for them. And draw them back into the app. That way they can go straight back to the messaging. They can get their problem resolved, or they can provide more information as necessary. And then the last part is mobile devices open up a incredible new opportunity for you, which is that they capture a lot of information. And you want to make sure that you're utilizing that to make sure that agents are able to resolve the issue more quickly. So capture, what device type are they on? What version of your app are they using? What have they been doing recently? What are some of the profiles associated with them? You know, use all of that data together to avoid a ton of back and forth and questioning the user. Just have the information at hand because you've captured it with your app. So a good example of a company that moved from email, where the bulk of folks were supporting today, to this kind of in-app experience is Jam City. They're a major game publisher, and they were transitioning from email support to in-game support. They had gone from completely email-based to heavily in-game in terms of how they were offering support. They were able to deflect 90% of support requests. They were able to through automation and through a good FAQ, handle 90% of issues without actually having to have a human involved. And that had two benefits. Number one, it meant that their players were getting answers faster, but second, it meant that they were entailing less cost. They also were able to reduce their overall issue volume by 30%. And that's where the self-service really comes in, is folks were able to find their own answers rather than creating tickets in essence. And they saw CSAT double. So, users were happier, the response time was better, the number of issues was down, and the speed to resolution was much faster. So how do you get there, and how do you handle high levels of scale? Well, the key, as I mentioned, is automation. In mobile apps, scale is just way off the charts compared to a lot of traditional services. If I was to look at, say, a ride-sharing company versus a traditional travel business, they are just handling so much more. If I look at mobile gaming, for example, they just operate at massive scale, hundreds of millions of players. I mean, these are way beyond what traditional, offline businesses operate at. Second, growth is explosive. We've talked about this. It comes in waves. There's seldom time to plan for that growth. The third piece is margins are often low. A lot of mobile apps operate on sort of small kind of microtransactions. The margins aren't big. If I look at things like mobile games, a lot of them, many of their users are free players that they're hoping to monetize eventually, but they're playing for quite a while before they actually get monetized, if they do at all. So a single support ticket that goes to an agent can eat the entire margin sometimes. And then users, as we mentioned, are impatient. They demand an immediate response or they move on. So you have higher volumes, lower margins, and higher demands for speed than sort of the traditional businesses that a lot of customer service solutions were built for. So how do you automate and how do you do it effectively? Well, the first piece is to understand a user's intent. Figure out what is it that they actually want to accomplish. The good news is AI has actually progressed pretty substantially here at determining what the customer wants. A human being, typically, if you have a set of potential issues that a user might have, a human being will get it right with about 85% accuracy. 15% of the time they'll be like, oh, I thought they were asking about this, but they're actually asking about that. But 85% of the time, a human will be right. AI has actually progressed to the point that it can get above that number, sometimes well above that number. Now, that doesn't mean that AI has become a panacea, that it can fully replicate human speech. There's a lot of things AI can't do. But intent classification is one thing that the technology has really advanced, and it does really, really well. So what you need to do is focus on the common issues. You need to figure out what are the issues that represent, say, 80% of all user issues. And the good news is for a lot of mobile apps, that's only half a dozen or a dozen or a couple dozen issues. There tend to be real clusters around, hey, I can't get into my account. hey, I have a billing question, things like this. All of these can be automated with bots. And so you need to build purpose-built bots that solve those issues. Now, not every issue, however, can be 100% automated. There are times that human needs to get involved. Bots play a role there too, because a disproportionate amount of time that agents actually spend solving issues are just collecting information or data from the end user. So bots can do the grunt work. Bots can ask the routine questions to collect that data and hand it off to a human being. And between that data and the data that you've collected from your mobile app itself, you can actually get to a situation where agents really hit the ground running and solve issues a lot quicker. The last piece is think globally. We've seen so many companies that start to do this right, but they do it right in English, or they do it right in one language. Think globally, make sure that that whatever approach you take will work with multiple languages sort of out of the box. Because it's typical that a lot of these mobile apps are operating across borders. So what's an ideal architecture for delivering this? Well, we already talked about the sort of end user experience, that they should be able to jump in and out of the app at will. When they ask a question, use AI to determine the intent. If it's something that's automatable, either fully or partially, send it off to a bot. Build a purpose-built workflow in a bot to solve that issue, or to at least partially solve that issue. If it's something that's outside the bounds in that 20% that isn't fully automatable, send it off to an agent. But then also keep your options open. Bots can collect data and they can pass off to agents. Sometimes agents just have to get them through a couple of steps, and then everything else is routine thereafter. And they can pass it back to a bot at that time. So this is really the way to think about automation for a mobile app. So just as an example, one customer of ours, they started an automation journey. It was actually a total of a 22-week journey. So a little, what would that be? A little less than half a year, maybe about a third of a year, a little more than a third, a little less than half. And they initially had agents handling 80% of customer issues. And over time, they started building more and more bots. They thought through which ones they could use to collect information, hand over to agents, and which ones were fully automatable business processes. And by the end of that, by the 22nd week, 70% of their issues were completely automated through bots. 20% were handled by bots that then escalate to agents, and 10% were agent only. So only 10% of their issues had no automation involved. Now, this is sort of best in class. This is something to aim for, but they got there pretty quickly. And what we've seen from a lot of companies and a lot of customers of ours is a lot of these issues are automatable, and they can be relatively quickly deployed and solved. So let's talk about automation. Our next poll is, how many of your issues are you automating today? Is it over 75%? Is it between half and 3/4? Is it between a quarter, 25%, and 50%, half? Is it under 25%, or are you doing no automation today? So I see the answers coming in. I'll give it a few more minutes. Now they're coming in a little faster. Still a few more. Okay, and I will close this poll in 3, 2, 1. Actually, I guess it got closed before me. So it's interesting. Half of you aren't doing any automation today. A quarter of you are doing a quarter of your issues automated. Only 17% are doing over half, and nobody's doing over 75%. I would say that's not atypical. In fact, you're probably better than most as a group. A lot of companies that we start talking to, aren't over half, but can get there. And we find a lot of folks who haven't automated at all. I think automation is one of the huge opportunities to both improve the quality of your support and reduce your costs. So for those of you who right now are doing none, I guess we didn't ask whether you had a plan to get there. I would start thinking about a plan to get there, because it really can drive a lot of benefits both for you and for your users. So moving on, let me close that. I talked about how support shouldn't be dependent on dev. It's really important to realize that support, while it's super important, isn't what's going to make your app different than someone else's. It's what's going to hold your app back when it's already great. So you should really focus on you should keep your dev team focused on what really matters for your app. What is the core functionality? If it's a game, how do you make the gameplay more fun? If it's a service, how do you make that service more differentiated from the others who are trying to build similar sort of things? And sort of use off-the-shelf solutions for support. Also, don't become bottlenecked. We find so many companies where support basically is struggling to keep up, and they get stuck in the backlog of their dev team. And they say, I've got this problem. I know it's a problem. I want to solve it today. I want to automate this issue. I want to deliver this better level of support. But I can't do it until I get my dev team to work on it, and they can't get it in for the next 4 to 5 sprints. Don't let that happen. Next point is that development teams don't necessarily understand every element of the life of a customer service organization. So they spend a lot of time sort of requirements gathering, making sure that they know what they need to build. Sometimes they get it really well, get it right, do really well. And sometimes they don't, but it takes a while for them to sort of architect what that's going to look like. And then, the last piece is developers, data scientists, if you're trying to do automation, et cetera, are really expensive resources. And so anything you can do to drive down the number that you need to be successful is a win. So one of the ways that you can succeed with doing this is to integrate sort of off-the-shelf solutions. Use something that just requires you to integrate an SDK. The SDK takes care of all the data, integrates with the app, feels native, and then you don't have to build it the way some companies have. Second, ensure that everything is there, that the native help centers are there, that the chat is there. We find a lot of companies who have picked solutions that they said, oh, they've got an SDK, we're good. And then they find out they have to do a ton of customization to make it work well with their app, to feel native with their app, etc. Don't go down that route. Make sure that on day one, everything is sort of working out of the box. Third, build your own bots. Don't be in a situation where you need to build out a data science team, build out a bunch of developers to handle automation. Leverage visual tools. They're out there. They're actually pretty good to easily design bots that require little coding, no specialized skills, that really can be handled by sort of a tools team or sometimes a customer support supervisor. And then the last piece is avoid the data science trap. A lot of projects end up spinning because there are grand plans for automation, but ultimately they find we don't have enough data to actually train the models that we want to build. So make sure that even with the data you already have from existing issues, that your automation solution will work, at least reasonably well on day one. So a good example of this is a company called Guayabolso. So Guayabolso, and I apologize that my Portuguese is a little lacking, They are a financial tech company in Brazil. Very interesting company, really trying to be a hub for financial products in Brazil. It was very interesting when I was talking to them. Apparently, Brazil doesn't have the credit scores that we have in the US, so data is super valuable to them, etc. They wanted to build a chatbot. It was called, I don't know if it's Guaya or GUI or how you say that in Portuguese. But they wanted to make that available to their users to deliver a better experience. It was actually more on the experience side than on the cost side. So they didn't want to depend, however, on their engineering teams, their product teams. It would take a long time to get that all done. And they had a lot of different financial capabilities that they wanted to build for their product. So they actually worked with us, and they put together their chatbot in 3 weeks' time, and immediately, improved the response time, handled a big increase in volumes without having to grow their team. It only took them 3 weeks' time, which is quite different than some companies that we've seen that these become multi-year types of projects. Now, I said declare your independence from the development team. I didn't say ignore the development team. I think the important thing here is to sort of flip the script. Instead of asking for development resources to do support things, use support trends to influence the product roadmap. So if you really want to differentiate your product, and if you want to sort of eliminate the points of customer frustration, product teams are always looking for data as input. So focus on the issues that are frustrating the customers. Ensure that the next cohort of users that you acquire aren't going to face the same problems as the last cohort. Now, when you're working with product teams here, bring analytics to the table. Identify how stuff is trending over time. Identify what was an issue yesterday that isn't an issue today, and what's an issue today that wasn't an issue yesterday. Figure out within each of those issues more details. Be able to search back through all of the issues that you've worked through, the back and forth, and add that sort of extra color, and then bring that analytics to the table to make better product decisions. So a company that's done really well with this is Microsoft. So Microsoft, within their Outlook mobile product, actually takes in the input coming from their support issues and uses it as feedback to figure out the hotspots in their product. And they actually look at it from the view of the top 5 things we should be looking at this week. So what are the problems today? What are the top 5? And that's really what they want to look at any given time so that they can address those issues. Sometimes they can sometimes they're the same issue one week after another because it takes a little time to resolve an issue. And sometimes they can resolve it really quickly and they can knock down a big issue. So Microsoft has actually brought the customer support data and used it as a set of insights to be able to evolve their mobile app. I thought that was very interesting. So we've really built our product around those 3 pillars or those 3 areas of focus. We've built HelpShift really for the mobile app and for the modern experience of how people are communicating in the app today. We aren't bringing a legacy technology to mobile. We were born mobile. Second, we've worked to get the automation right, to be able to train the automation models without a whole lot of data so that they can be routed to bots for resolution. And then the third piece is we've built out very simple SDK integration, the ability to tie in mobile help centers and mobile chat right into the app, and to make it work reliably on every single mobile device out there. And then we've built also a visual bot builder that makes building bots really easy. It's what Guayaboso, for example, used in that story earlier. And we've done it at really, really high scale. So today we're on 2.4 billion devices. We handle 850 million self-service interactions a year and 650 million messages. And we do it across a wide range of customers. Our sort of bread and butter, our first place that we operated was mobile gaming. The volumes there are just huge, and they were really early adopters of this type of technology. But we've started to see other businesses, other mobile innovators across retail, financial services, entertainment, et cetera, start to adopt and be more successful with these types of technologies and these type of experiences. And so just to sort of close out, a final story, a company called Nordeus, they also are a gaming company, very popular with sort of sports games and sports related games. Excuse me. So they were looking to scale, to automate, to deliver a great experience. They have been with HelpShift for a while and were increasing their automation. Today, 73% of their issues are handled by bots. So just shy of that 75 number that we had in the poll. 45% of issues, so just under half, are resolved without, excuse me, any agent interaction. As a result, they've been able to reduce their outsourcer costs by 40%. So it's had an impact on their overall costs and their bottom line. And then I mentioned that humans typically can only determine user intent with about 85% accuracy. They're almost 10% higher today. So very accurate at figuring out what the user wants to get done. So just as a real story that pulls together some of these best practices that we talked about today. This is achievable. There are really 4 key steps around it. The first is to deliver the strong user experience. Use an SDK to provide in-app support. Second, most issues can be resolved with self-service and bots. Set that up, deflect as many issues as you can. Be faster in resolving their issues. Use automation, for example, to keep people from having to wait on responses. And when they do have to wait, respect their time and deliver that superior experience. And then finally, think about this within the broader picture of your app. How are you going to use this to reduce churn, to increase usage of your app, and to actually monetize more? This can have a pretty dramatic impact on the bottom line. You just have to get started. And with that, I'll open up for Q&A. I think Caitlin's going to drive that. So I know there have been some questions asked in the Q&A manager. If you do have additional questions, feel free to add those in now, and I'll go ahead and see what we got.
Perfect. So first question is a callback to a comment at the beginning of this presentation. But we are wondering, what are some of the examples of apps that are excelling in in-app support?
So there's a handful of them. I would say most of I've mentioned. So I'll mention who's good and who's less good in certain areas. I would say most of the rideshare companies, most of the food delivery companies, I would say do well with the in-app FAQs. They do less well with sort of the support escalation paths. A lot of the games, we mentioned Nordeus, we mentioned Jam City. I would also say some of the games from Tencent games, some of the games from Supercell do well across the board, manage to handle both self-service support and the sort of messaging experience really well. One I'm actually fond of that is not a customer of ours, but I'll call them out, is Wish, the shopping app. They have a really, really good support experience. They also have an entire development team that built that out. So, they've managed to get up to a good level, but it costs them, I'm certain, a great deal to get there. A lot of the other apps, middling, I would say, but those jump to mind. The gaming companies have been faster. been better. I would say Square does a nice job with support, particularly for their Square merchants. But those are just a few that jump to mind.
Thanks, Michael. All right, next question is, what are your experiences with automating for the VIP treatment for the most valuable customers who are demanding a high-end experience and that human touch?
So that's an interesting one because, and this comes up with a lot of gaming companies, and there's a couple of different philosophies around this. Some of the gaming companies we work with simply say, hey, for the VIPs, I just want to send them to a person. I'm going to prioritize those issues. I'm not going to make them wait for an agent. I'm just going to move that to the front of the queue, and that'll work for me. And I totally understand that. And that is one perfectly reasonable approach to take. If 1% of your customers are representing a large percentage of your revenue, it's in essence a personal concierge type approach, similar to what some traditional businesses have done. I've also seen others that basically say, actually, I have used automation, and I will put them in a different automation flow, perhaps, than the general population goes into. But for a lot of issues, I'd rather just automate the issue and then escalate to sort of a VIP support if they don't get the answer they want. I would say the important thing is to sort of test it out. Once you've got your automation to a good state, that approach can work. There can be some growing pains. So I generally am a fan of test everything. I think that's a good principle in mobile apps just in general, and see which one works better for you. We have seen some companies that have tested and they found that an automated path actually leads to a higher CSAT than a purely VIP concierge approach. And we found some that said it doesn't. Figure out what's right for your base. Both are definitely options. I think an important thing, however, is to make sure that you're collecting CSAT and feedback data at the end of every support interaction, so you have the data to make those decisions and to make them in an informed way, and not just be thinking about the generalized best practices.
On that similar note, another question we got was, what do you recommend for early stage products that are just launching into the market? Perhaps they don't have a dedicated support agents, and there might be a concern about offering the in-app chat, which requires faster responses that they might not be able to achieve.
Well, I don't think that it necessarily, this is the thing, is I don't think in-app chat necessarily requires faster responses from the company. You end up with faster responses because you can handle more issues at the same time. You end up with faster responses because you can automate things. But it's not necessarily that it necessarily drives to a higher SLA expectation from the customer. So I still encourage thinking about it early on. Now, I'm not going to say that the smallest company, if you're at a point where you're at 50 MAU, I think you've got bigger fish to fry than thinking about your support experience. But as you start to grow and you start to get some traction, pretty early on, I would start building out that infrastructure to be able to handle it. There are benefits even at the smaller sizes. There is obviously, you have to prioritize against other needs of your app. And if you're having, only a couple of inquiries a day, you may not be quite ready for that. But as you grow, I would say it's something that you should be planning in advance.
Thanks. Another question on this note of automation is, how do we avoid feeling like robots or offering a cold support experience when using bots in automation?
That's a really good question. So I think one of the things that people have done wrong over the years is that they've tried to pretend that bots aren't bots, that they've, in essence, they've gotten cute with their bots. They've tried to make them more conversational, and then eventually the bot hits a point where it can't really respond the way a human would, and it becomes abundantly clear that it's a bot. Make it clear that you're talking to a bot at the other end, and you can in essence you can put personalization around a bot, but at the same time, and you can be fun with a bot. Don't get me wrong; like a bot can have a personality to it, but it's also still a bot. And let people know, I'm going to try to resolve your issue, and if I can't, I'm going to hand it off to a person. I'm going to collect some information, and I'm going to hand it off to a person. I'm the return bot. Help me get it back to you as quickly as possible. I couldn't solve your issue. I'm going to hand you off to Joe. As long as you set the right expectation around the bot, I think most people are okay with it. That doesn't mean don't make it fun. That doesn't mean don't make it interesting. But don't make your bot pretend like it's not a bot, because people aren't dumb. They'll figure it out.
I think this is our second last question here. It's similar, loops back to what you just answered, but if we are sending someone to a bot before an agent, will the delay caused by this transfer be a point of irritation for customers?
Generally, no. Ideally, the situation is if you're going to send them to an agent either way in that scenario. If every agent has to, or if every issue has to go directly to the agent, that's a higher capacity. And if you have the same number of agents, they're going to be waiting longer than they would have otherwise. So ideally, if you do it right, you'll actually reduce the wait time in the process. And we've never actually seen a customer, at least that I'm aware of, that saw that go up when they were automating. Now, the nice thing is that if your bots can solve, even 10% of the issues, that then further reduces the amount of issues that are going to a human being and actually gets you a faster response time. That's part of why we typically see a pretty substantial increase, or rather decrease, in both time to first response and time to total resolution when we bring automation to the table.
All right, I think this might be our last question here, Michael, but what is your opinion of a good indicator to look at when deciding to scale up your support teams?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think it's trends in issue volume. Well, the first one is trends in issue volume. Like if you're growing 10% a month, 20% a month, 30% a month, or if that's actually, handling it, or if that's growing in an exponential versus linear rate, forecast out based upon that. The second is CSAT. How is that trending over time? If that is trending downwards, I would say it's time to think about, are you actually delivering the SLAs that your customers desire? Then under that, you can get into additional metrics of time to first response and time to resolution and things like that to find the root cause there and decide the right approach. Is the right approach more agents? Is the right approach more automation? Is the right approach something else? More FAQs, a different approach. But that would be where I would start when I think about those.
Great. Well, with that, thank you everyone for asking all of your questions today. And thank you, Michael. If we were able to answer all of your questions, but if you do have any following this webinar, you can respond to one of the emails we've sent today, or send us an email directly to info@helpshift.com. As mentioned earlier, if you have opted into our email communications, we will send you a follow-up email with this recording and with some additional resources to some of those examples that Michael shared today. But with that, thank you everyone. Hope you have a great day. And thank you, Michael.
Thank you.